Hey guys, welcome back to the fish room. Um, this is the 125 that I have had. It's actually been sitting up on its end for almost 2 years now, so it's finally time to put it together. You can see this is out in my warehouse on my property, so it doesn't have to be anything pretty. It's just sitting on center blocks, and I have a 2x4 with a 3/4 inch plywood deck here. Pretty simple, pretty cheap, pretty ugly, but pretty functional. So that's what I'm going for. Anyway, I'm not 100% sure what I am going to do with this tank. However, I do need to get it started and get the cycling going. I need to add the substrate to it. I don't know if I'm going to add plants to it just yet, or if it's going to be a cichlid grow out tank. I have probably 125 cichlid babies that need to get into bigger tanks to grow out, so this would be a good one. I am also kind of leaning towards the side of making it a big planted tank too, because I love the planted tanks. They're awesome. But at any rate, I do know that the base substrate is going to be sand here. So I have 2, 4, 6, 7 50-pound bags of pool filter sand. It is a little higher on the silica content, I think, so you have to rinse it pretty well, and it may cause a little bit of an algae bloom if you have too much light too early, but knock on wood, that has not been an issue for me. I have been using it for years. It's in almost all of my tanks. It's good stuff. Normally, if I'm setting up a small tank, I will rinse the sand out in a bucket several times and let the water overflow until it's not cloudy anymore. With this much sand, it would just take forever in a day, and that's just not going to happen because I have too much stuff going on. So what I'm going to do anytime I do a larger tank like this and it's a new setup, I will take all of the sand and go ahead. I have a couple of inches of water in the tank already. I'm going to put all of the sand in here and then I will start adding water with the hose and agitate the sand and kick up all of the dust. At the same time, I will have a little pump on the opposite end here. The right side of my tank is slightly lower than the left side of the tank, so I am going to put a pump over here in the lowest corner, and while I am flushing the dust and stuff out of the sand, it will be pumping all of that cloudy stuff out. And then once the area over here in the corner is clear, then I know that I'm good to go ahead and start filling it up. And then I will fill it up and get the filters running on it, and then we'll let the filters run and cycle the tank. I am going to do a quick start on this tank though, because I have many tanks out here. I have lots of filters. I have sponge filters, extra sponge filters going in many of them. I have extra canister filters running in a lot of them too, so I'm gonna take 2 new FX6s probably and put them on here. One with a chemical filtration, like I don't know if I'll do Pure Chem or just charcoal and different buffers for the water. If I do cichlids, then I'll end up putting crushed coral in it and let that buffer the cage for the water. It all depends in which direction we go. So one of the FX6s will be chemical filtration, one of them will be mechanical filtration, so it'll probably have several different layers of maybe some pond bio balls. It'll have some ceramic filtration in it. It'll have several different things in it to keep this thing extra crisp and clear. But to get it started, I'll go ahead and throw in some media from some other filters that I already had going. And go ahead and help seed the tank and get it going. But I am going to let this tank run with all of its filters for still probably a week, even though I'm going to have plenty of seed material and established filters going into it. I'll probably still let it run for a week just to make sure that everything is cool, and it'll also give me a chance to figure out what I'm going to do. So I think what I may do to start out with is I'm going to put all of my sand in here. I have plenty of sand to cover the main part of the tank, and then I may put large planter pots, terracotta pots in either of the back two corners, and maybe keep my plant substrate in those. That way it doesn't make a mess and I can cap it, and maybe grow plants that way instead of having dirt and fertilizer in the soil, in the sand and all of that in the center. So at any rate, I'm just gonna give you a quick rundown on how this goes down. I'm gonna close my mouth now and start doing something. So I will try to figure out how to speed this up in the editing process, but it shouldn't take too long. All right. So you can see what I'm using here is Lighthouse Pool filter sand. There are a few different companies that make aquarium sand. Carib Sea makes one. There's a few other brands on top of like Argonite and crushed coral and stuff like that. That stuff can get really expensive. It's like, I don't know, it's like 20 bucks for 15, 20 pounds, something like that, maybe if you're lucky. This stuff here is a 50-pound bag, and it's about $10 or $11 I just go to the pool supply place, and I'll be honest, what I do is I just go to the front desk and I ask them if they have any bags that are damaged on the pallet, because if they're damaged, customers don't want to put them in their car. So you can see this one here had a rip on it. So when they open up the pallet and they find them, they'll just toss them over to the side because nobody wants to buy them and make a mess in their car. So I just go in and ask them if I can have the ones with busted bags. So every time I go by there, there's maybe 3 or 4 bags during the warmer season. So you can get 50-pound bags for free. Just FYI. Also makes it easier to handle. There's a handle on the top, so if you lay them down and you cut the bottom, then you can drop it in and hold it from the handle and dump it out. Makes it a little easier. There is a lot of sand here, so I don't know if I'm going to need all 7 bags. I'm lucky that I have a warehouse on my property that has concrete floors. And this would be, if I use all 7 bags, that'd be 350 pounds of sand. Plus a couple hundred pounds of glass. And then another 800 pounds of water, maybe, something like that. So you definitely have to be careful where you put these guys. If you put them in the wrong place, they can end up warping your floors. Okay, you can see the water here is pretty cloudy and dusty. So I'm going to go ahead and get the pump. Alright, get this pump going. I'm going to grab the hose. Now we're just going to kind of rinse and agitate the sand. And let it pump all of that cloudy stuff out. This is a relatively coarse sand, fortunately, so it's not super sand or super dusty. Gonna rinse it out until it's mostly clear, and then let it settle a little bit. Like I said, I use this sand in pretty much all of my tanks. I have several glass bottom tanks for grow out tanks and breeding tanks and stuff like that, just because it's easier to clean, therefore it's easier to keep the water quality good. You can see the foam over here on this side. So it's important that you get that kind of mess out of there. Not to mention, you know, you're not 100% sure where they get this from. It's made for your swimming pool, so it's supposed to be pretty clean, but as you can see, yeah, you don't have to breathe your pool water. try to keep a channel clear in the front and push the sand towards the back. That way the water has an easy way to get back down here to the pump so it can continue to get the cloudy stuff out. And typically this process doesn't take too long. Maybe 15 or 20 minutes max, depending on how good your pump is and how good your water pressure is. So I have lots of tanks here in the fish room. I mentioned earlier that I have a lot of cichlids that need more room to grow out. So I have several 40-gallon breeders that I think I may move them into. I'll probably split them into groups and move them into that if I decide to make this a planted tank. I'm very inclined to do so because I really enjoy the planted tanks. The problem is, I really like my cichlids. And cichlids are really destructive to the plants. So either they eat the plants or they dig around and they uproot them and then they're floating at the top of the tank. It's just kind of a losing battle with them. I used to keep everything but cichlids, and now I have mainly moved over to cichlids. However, I do have a fair amount of tetras. I have neon tetras, I have black skirt tetras, I have guppies and Cory cats, I have emerald cats, I have a school of those. I have blood parrot cichlids, I have Ventosa cichlids, I have zebra danios, I have silver shark catfish, I have a small school of turquoise severums. I actually want to set them up with a breeding tank too. They're finally, they're overdue for breeding actually. They just happen to share a 180-gallon tank with a big pushy flower horn. So she's about to go into her own breeding tank too. So maybe once I separate them out, we'll get a little action over there. What else do we have? We have ghost shrimp, we have bumblebee catfish, we have coolie loaches, crayfish that started out very small and came with some rosy red minnows. Oh, we have minnows as well. I have those guys set up and breeding actually in a 30-something gallon blue trash can that I bought from Lowe's for $20. It was way cheaper of an option than buying another aquarium for them. At any rate, I have lots of stuff, I'm sure. Oh, I have angelfish, I have hillstream loaches, convict cichlids. I have so many different kinds of cichlids. I have American flagfish or Florida flagfish, depending on who you are and what you're calling them. Those guys are super cool. Those are the only fish that I have found that make quick work out of black hair algae. So if any of you guys out there have planted tanks and you are fighting black beard algae, and if you have high light, and especially if you're doing CO2, you're running a high-tech tank, black hair algae or black beard algae it's a beast, and it will take over, and it's really ugly, and it's really hard to get rid of unless you pull everything out and soak it in bleach or something like that that's really toxic and hard to get off of your stuff before you put it back in your tank. I just don't like to do that kind of stuff. But anyway, the flagfish, man, I had a 55-gallon planted tank in my living room, and I have a Fluval 3 fresh and planted 48-inch plant light on there. And it's a beast, man. It will give you artificial sunlight in a box for sure. But it was giving me pretty crazy algae blooms of different sorts when I was first setting it up, and I was running CO2 on it and that kind of stuff, because I was trying to get the tank to fill out and get established rather quickly, as soon as possible. So I opted for more plants and less fish, and cranked up the CO2 a little bit, and got it established, and it worked. It did exactly what I wanted it to. It was kind of like putting all the plants on steroids. I was dosing the water with the Aquarium Co-op Easy Green, which is awesome, by the way. I was also using several different kinds of root tabs and breaking them up and putting them underneath my root plants. I had lots of stem plants, so the Easy Green was awesome for the stem plants. And again, that stuff comes from Aquarium Co-op. Those guys were invaluable when I was learning how to set up planted tanks. Them and the dude, I can't remember his name, but it's like the water box or something like that. He has a lot of really good videos about planted tanks, and he really goes into the science behind it, and the lights and the nutrients and all that jazz. And I'm kind of a nerd sometimes. I like to take a deep dive into stuff. I get bored easily, so I like to learn, and I like to build, and I like to experiment and try new stuff. My 12-year-old and I were making sugar rockets in the shop and shooting them off a couple hundred feet up in the air just last week. So we like to play. We like to figure stuff out. But at any rate, I kind of went off the rails there a little bit. I forgot where I was going with that, but at any rate, the planted tanks, I know we were talking about that. I think this guy here, if I don't do cichlids in here, then I would love to do like a bunch of the newbie. Oh, I was talking about the flagfish. Sorry, guys. I knew it would come back to me. Anyway, the tank that I have in the house, the 55-gallon, it started having algae problems, and I fixed everything else by adjusting the light and the nutrients, but the black hair algae just would not go away. And I ended up finding a couple of those little flagfish by accident, and I thought they were cool. I found them at a big box store, and I brought them home, and I threw them in there, and about 2 days later, and I had hair algae on the bottom of like some anubias. I have an anubias plant in there that I've had for probably 6 years, and it started out attached to a little rock, and it's now probably 2 feet long. and it's kind of arching across the back of my 55-gallon aquarium. But all of the roots had just been taken over with black hair algae, and it was awful. And they were starting to take over the leaves of the anubias, because anything slow growing like those is really susceptible to the brown algae, the diatom algae, and the hair algae and all that stuff, and it'll kill them like really, really fast. It'll suck all the nutrients up out of the water so that they can't get any of them, and then they'll start sucking the nutrients out of the plants too with their roots, I guess. But anyway, I threw those flagfish in that aquarium, and within 2 or 3 days, man, there was not a single string of hair algae, black beard algae anywhere in my tank to be found. They just completely took care of all of it. So I have not found anything else that eats the black hair algae, but it was weird. It was almost like they preferred it. So anyway, problem solved with that. I will probably make a video on that tank at some point. You can see the water is still a little cloudy, but it is actually not as bad as I anticipated. So I think I will let this drain down, and I'll probably spray it down, rinse it out once or twice more. I will spare you the pain and agony of sitting through that. It's not that interesting of a process, but it is the process nonetheless. So I will make this happen. I will get it drained down and filled back up, and put some filters on it, and catch back up with the video. Right. Or I may just make another video altogether. I'm not quite sure. So see you in a little bit.